Hey y'all, hey, I'm Saleemah McNeil of Oshun Family Center, and I got my co-host here.
Jabina Coleman, Reproductive Psychotherapist and Board Certified Lactation Consultant.
And we're going to be talking to y'all today about our podcast, the Big Girl Panties podcast, curated by the Maternal Wellness Village. You got your first two co-hosts here, and we're going to walk you through the beginning of
the Big Girl Panties podcast
and Black Breastfeeding Week. We got the girls out. Let's go.
So, Black Breastfeeding Week, August 25th to August 31st every year, really signifies what? The journey for Black breastfeeding for Black mothers and birthing people. And so both Saleemah and I have had our own personal experiences with breastfeeding. So we're here to talk to you about that today. Saleemah, talk about it. What's your breastfeeding journey been like?
Before we get there, let me tell you about why it's called the Big Girl Panties podcast. So as I said, I'm a therapist, and in that journey of doing therapy, especially working with Black women and families as they overcome different things, traumatic and birthing journeys, we realize that every single day you got to get up and do hard shit. And if you got to do the hard shit, why not, while you're putting your big girl panties on, pick the prettiest pair. So at least you know and you feel good that as you venture out into the world to do the tough things, that you got something that nobody else knows about, which is your pretty panties. So please, share with us. What kind of panties you got on, Bean?
Good question. So I know we talked about this before jumping on a podcast. And it's real interesting when we talk about like what kind of panties you got on or what you wearing today. One, because it just signifies sometimes your mood. And so my go-to is some boy shorts. Yes. Or nothing at all.
A little cheeky, huh?
Yes.
Me, what I'm wearing today, I got on this bodysuit that's fucking killing me if I'm being honest. But on any given day, I love me a pair of Skimmy Cakes Skims panties. They feel like butter on my butt.
Yes,
but
they do.
I digress. So let's jump into it. Black Breastfeeding Week. We got the guru here, Jabina Coleman. Like, we not going to be humble at all today, guys. So please go off this about how you started in this journey of breastfeeding your little one of them who's here now.
So my journey and actually my story starts 19 years ago. Yes, I do have a 19-year-old. And I was interested in breastfeeding in school, undergrad. And, during I think it was like my last semester, last presentation, I Googled and looked up breastfeeding, Black breastfeeding, and the numbers, the statistics and everything was it was just like crazy. Very similar 19 years ago to the statistics today. And I was pregnant and I was like, you know what? I'm Black. I'm an undergrad. I have a supportive family and I'm going to do this. Unbeknownst to me.
The journey.
So the journey was incredibly hard. It was incredibly challenging. And for a really long time before coming into the field, I thought it was me. I thought it was because I was deficit. I had, in some type of way.
Yeah.
And so I think that just kind of propelled me into the field of social work, into the field of women's health, and just not wanting other women, especially Black women, to have the same experience that I did.
Right.
And so that kind of was like the push. That was where the passion started. And it started there. And I became the first non-nurse IBCLC, International Board Certified Lactation Consultant in the city of Philadelphia.
Yes.
So it's been a journey, but it's been a great journey because I've been able to take my own personal experience and the experience of my daughter, who I breastfed for 4 years. So my experiences, I had experiences on two different ends of the spectrum. So one who I had challenges with, no support from like my providers or anyone like that. But with my daughter, I had an amazing experience.
Nice.
And so it was like night and day.
Yeah. And you had to put your big girl panties on pretty early in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My journey started 17 years ago, so not too far behind you, but I had an example. So my sister had 2 kids before I had a kid, and she breastfed both of her children. And it just seemed like the natural thing to do, which was next. Even down to being in a hospital after experiencing a traumatic birth experience and feeling really compelled to continue the journey into trying to feed my kid. Now, I was in the hospital for 9 days, and homeboy did not latch in the hospital until my sister came closer to when we were about to be discharged. And I had a white lactation consultant in the hospital that was super abrasive. You know, they grab your boobs, they try to shove it in a baby's mouth.
Tell me about it. It's like he is everywhere.
I don't want this. He doesn't want this. We just recovering from this experience. So neither one of us was like, this is our journey. However, my sister came in and she was like, it's all right. As soon as she leaves, like, I'll help you out with the feeding. And I was like, all right. And he cried and got a wide open mouth and she put my boob in there and I immediately got nauseous.
I was gonna say, like, they strong and mighty. Like,
Oh my
that
gosh.
first latch, woo.
I felt like it was pulling everything through, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up on him. And she's like, don't throw up on my nephew. And that is what our journey looked like. I was committed to leaving the hospital without any formula, and we were going to do this as a new item, a parent and a new little baby, and we were going to embark on this journey. And it went really well. Like, I enjoyed my breastfeeding journey. It was free, it was convenient, and the people around me were so interested because we were all like relatively young, and now I got this new baby, and I'm gonna pull my boob out in front of everybody and feed them. And so that was very, very interesting. And people were like, well, how does he eat? How much does he eat? And he was such a people person. I would walk into a room, hand that baby off, and they would only bring her back to me when it was time for him to eat because now he's trying to get to other people. So everybody has a very different breastfeeding journey. But what would you say like some of your glows and grows of that experience have been?
I think some of the glows are just, you know, regardless of what my goals were at the time, just making it sure, like just making it through one day. I feel like for me, it was just like day by day, making sure that my child was fed. In hindsight, I could say that's the hindsight glow.
Yeah.
Because when you're in it, you like, I don't know if I could feed you for another second. Like, I don't think I you know, depending on what your experience is, but it can be really challenging. So for me, my glows are also my experience propelled me into the field that I love, that I do. You know, there's instant gratification. But for me, this just feels like this long journey, of being able to like continue to experience that, you know, continue to experience and use my breastfeeding experience with the community in research, in the hospital setting, you know. So I think it definitely, that's a glow. And yeah.
And you grew through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that we've had the opportunity to work within the healthcare system and with community-based organizations to help change that culture, because so many people have stories just like ours, whether it's the grows or the glows. And I think hospital lactation consultants are abrasive.
Yes.
And now working with the hospital system, I have a better understanding of some of the things that drive it, which is time. Like, they don't have a lot of time to sit and evaluate and kind of connect to help you along that way. And also there's some cultural barriers and some racial barriers and some systemic issues that impact that as well. What are some of the things that you learned working within the health system?
So I think all the things you just said, right? So we're talking about all of the institutional issues and barriers. Working in the institution, time is they have no time. So you have a floor of, you know, maybe 46 mom and babies, and they don't have time to get to everyone. So that can be really challenging. However, I think it's really important that folks find their champion, right? So it's important to find your champion, find that person that's doing the work, find that person that's, you know, able to just connect with the rest of the team so that they can help support each other. And we also recognize, working in the hospital system, that it's not easy.
No.
And so there's oftentimes, you know, conflict within the hospital, right? So you have to get along with your coworkers. You have to be able to, you know, have these relationships because that helps and support the outcomes of our patients.
What did you see as some of the benefits early on of breastfeeding your oldest?
So for him specifically, it was my diet. I feel like he has a pretty good diet, but when I was pregnant with him and breastfed him, I was a vegetarian. So that, I think that has helped his palate. till this day, he still eats his vegetables, right? He's never been a kid to be like, eat your vegetables. But I also think our bond, we have a really good bond. Yes, if my 19-year-old could still sleep in the bed with me, he probably would. Okay. Yes. And I'm just like, no, but he's a mama's boy. And I appreciate that, because at 19, I want to know all the tea. So, I think it's like just amazing that has really, that was our journey. It was our journey. And I definitely think it has benefited us through our bond over time.
100%. And I think being a younger mom, being a new mom, and figuring that out, the bonding for me was amazing. When I see women now, or feeding parents now, and they're trying to cover up so people don't see yesterday. And we'll get into that amazing event that you had yesterday and some things that we have coming up. At the barbecue for Bay yesterday, I said, excuse me, if you're doing that for my comfort, you can take that right off, because little baby is okay. And the baby looked like he was about 6 months anyway, so he was
good, right?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I found in my breastfeeding journey, where I would try to be modest and trying to cover things up, and the baby was just not having it. He was like, get this blanket off of my head,
because it's hot.
Yes, that part.
Like,
he was
why?
sweaty, and I was like, oh my God, my poor baby is like sweating under this blanket for someone else's comfort. Absolutely not. So here we go, world, be uncomfortable, because this baby gonna be fed. And I think that having that as a beginning of our journey definitely propelled us into having like a really great standing relationship. And I tell people all the time, there's nothing you could tell boys about their moms, and I feel that.
Absolutely. So when you think about your work, because I don't think we've really got into that in terms of being a reproductive psychotherapist and doing birth work, how does your experience with breastfeeding, how has that shaped that, impact that into the work that you do now?
I don't get to tell many people this because it never comes up, but my first doula client, I was like 11 years old, and my dog had a litter of puppies. And I was home by myself, and these puppies were just falling out of her butt, because that's what I thought. And I was like, what is going on? But I was supportive. I got her water. They had blankets. And then I watched her feed her offspring. And it seemed so natural for them, and not to have seen that any other place besides when my sister decided to have children. I'm like, oh, this is the natural progression of life. In addition to my mother working in labor and delivery and in a nursery throughout my entire life, like way back when you can go and see all the babies lined up in the nursery, I was able to go visit her at work and go see the babies. So that was like the beginning as to where my interest was. And then my birthing experience made me angry. Because I realized that I didn't have to go through that, and it didn't have to be the way that it was. We'll get into a birth story a whole nother day. But that is the reason why I do what I do now. That is the reason why Oshun Family Center exists. It is the reason why I went to school to become a reproductive psychotherapist. However, my initial introduction into the field was through nursing school. I wanted to be a nurse. I thought I was going to be a midwife. Oh gosh, and then I got to a chemistry class, and I was like, bitch, I'm kind of dyslexic. I'm not going to do this and mess somebody's medicine up. So let's pivot into behavioral health. And that's where I found my footing in being there with a home visiting program with those moms. So my experience breastfeeding, I felt like even though I didn't have any traditional education around breastfeeding, that I could still be a support. And when I went out to those moms, I was encouraging and I was helpful, and I made sure that they had the things that they needed, which also made me want to become a certified lactation consultant along the way. And so all of these different blocks in life kind of built upon each other to be who I am today, which is a reproductive psychotherapist, because I never wanted to get rid of that maternal health space that I was in to get into a mental health space. And when I figured out I can marry that all together, I'm like, this is exactly what we need. And I've been on, and I call it a crusade, or being in this movement to literally help shift moving forward. I'm like, I can't do this by myself. So I need some people who are like-minded, who are mission-driven, for all of us to come together so we can move this as a unit. So breastfeeding started it. My dog having puppies, my mom taking me to, see the kids in the nursery, and it made for exactly what we're doing today.
And it typically stems from that personal experience.
Everything.
Right.
That's good. So we are in the thick of Black Breastfeeding Week. Congratulations on a successful event.
Thank you.
Yes. So tell me about yesterday. Barbecue for Bay, 7 years. How did we get here?
So Barbecue for Bay, BBQ for Bay is Beautiful Black Queens for Breastfeeding Awareness and Empowerment.
Yes.
Bay started in 2016. Me and a really close friend, Rebecca Duncan, Becky, who was a nurse, doula, IBCLC, and we saw a need. And Black Breastfeeding Week was coming up. And we were like, so what do you got going on in Philly? And honestly, there was nothing happening in the city. And so it was like 2 weeks before Black Breastfeeding Week. And we put a couple dollars together and was like, we're going to have a barbecue. We saw somebody on 52nd Street and was like, with the big grills. And we was like, hey, can you come up? We having something on this day. Can you come out? And they was like, yeah. And we just made some flyers on Canva. And we had a good little turnout.
I know that's right.
It was a really good turnout. And over the years, it has grown. We have received funding from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health to really support our work. And a lot of the other hospital institutions in the city has really come on board along with the community-based organizations. And so yesterday, BBQ for Bay, the 7th year, we had an amazing time. Bay really focuses on reproductive justice, trauma-informed care, and perinatal mental health, right? So both of us in the field of, in the field of women's health, my niche is lactation and perinatal mental health. And so recognizing that when we think about breastfeeding and we think about breastfeeding support groups and or resources and support, it's oftentimes siloed into, just focusing on a diet, not necessarily focusing on perinatal mental health. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were providing comprehensive support resources in a way that is holistic while we serve the community. So Bay has a red tent. If anyone of you are familiar with the red tent, just really symbolizes how we take care of each other as women. Yeah. And when we talk about, having our big girl panties on and what that looks like, you have to learn how to step into them things 1 foot at a time.
1 foot at a time.
And you have to also have people to support you to do that sometimes, right? Especially after, having these little babies. Yeah. So we recognize that, we wanted to incorporate that in a setting, in the community, in the park. What we also have done with the Bay is remove the tables. So oftentimes we'll go to you have community events and it's the tables lined up. And what they have is they create that physical barrier. There's already barriers between the community-based organizations often and the community and or institutions. Right. And so it's important for us to have the community-based organizations come out, but not bring their tables. And so that really sets us apart from other, events that other institutions do, because it is very much where I'm giving you something, you're receiving something. It's very contractual. Right. And so we want to really create the space of a humanistic approach between the community and the hospital institution and other community-based organizations.
Well, let me do it for you, girlfriend. One, congratulations.
Thank you.
Had about 300 people out there yesterday in Clark Park. There was 3 food trucks, funnel cake, Jamaican food, hamburgers and hot dogs. We had Afro beats out there.
We sure did. We had a good time.
Riri the Clown came out with a parrot. When we talk about BBQ, this is our style. This is for the culture. This is come on out. We're going to shake a little tail feather. We're going to have a little reading circle. And we're going to do all of the things that are near and dear to our hearts for our people and our culture. So again, congratulations on a much needed successful event. And I can't wait to see what year 10 looks like.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're going to blow it out the park.
We're planning. Yes. So it'll be a really good time. And we know our numbers just double every year. So.
Every single year. So if you're looking to give some coins, BBQ for Bay, to help us get some food out there, because everything is free for the community.
Everything is free for the community. And we don't like to turn people away. So that yesterday was a little challenging because we had everybody coming over saying, can I register and get a wristband? And we were at capacity. And so in the future, what we don't want to do is be able to turn someone away. So funding is always, really needed to get this work done.
Absolutely. So let's rewind, because we kicked off Black Breastfeeding Week with a collaboration.
Yes.
With our very first collaborative effort to host a birth worker event, which was at Irie Entree on 40th and Chestnut, where we brought together, about 50 Black birth workers. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, we had a couple other people in there.
Yeah.
You know what? This one wasn't a Black birth worker meetup. This was just a birth worker meetup. However, it was only one person that came that got the memo that they was invited to the cookout. So she showed up.
She showed up.
Yes.
And I think she was the right person to show up.
100%.
Absolutely.
Love her. You know who you are. So we were able to host this event to help bring birth workers together, to network, to absolutely share resources, and also overcome that barrier where you think that this other doula, this other lactation consultant, or this other therapist is your competition. So they forced me to give a little bit of a word on that, but stay tuned for episode 2 when we get into that fully. However, when we think about this collaborative effort and what we're able to do, what would you like to see in the future?
So in terms of Philly specifically, we are really doing the work. Mm-hmm. Philly is saturated with Black birth workers that really are here for the community to break these barriers. And so it's important for us to not be siloed. It's important for us to recognize that we have to come together to do this work. Mm-hmm. Because we can't do it on our own.
What Queen Latifah saying? You in 19?
Listen, you already know. If I have a client that I can't see, I'm calling Saleemah.
Right.
Hey, can you see this client? Mm-hmm. And vice versa. And so there are times when life gets in the way as parents, and you need to offload your clients, or you need to reach out because you can't make an appointment, or whatever the case may be. That's why we're here. And we're also here to learn from each other. So we are experts in the field of Black maternal health.
100%.
We're researchers, co-investigators. Mm-hmm. And so we're here. We're clinicians. We have over decades of experience between the two of us in the field on the ground. And so we also want to be able to connect with other birth workers. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like the auntie. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, I am the auntie of breastfeeding in Philly, because there was just a lot of young, birth workers like Jabina. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet you. I've been following your work. Right. I've seen you speak here or do this, and so it just felt like I'm able to now pass the baton in different areas, because I wear many, many hats. We know that really can't fit on the fro, but it's now I'm able to pass it off. Mm-hmm. There are other things that I don't have the capacity for. And so we will be reaching out to folks, because we're looking for a team of Bay ambassadors to really support the movement and support the work, because we have tons of projects on the way. And so it's really important when we're talking about collaboration that you recognize your strengths, and then you also recognize the strengths in others. 100%. Because I know what I need to call you for, and you know what you need to call me for. Mm-hmm. And honestly, putting our strengths together is what got us here today, what got us here and started with the Big Girls Panties podcast.
Say it 5 times.
Yes, Big Girl Panties podcast.
Yes, absolutely. And being in a place where we are and seeing where the growth has come from, and to think about the trajectory there and where we're going, it's like, wow, it all started when we decided to bring our little humans earthside. And then what that experience was and how professionally it shaped. I actually didn't know that I could make a career out of being a lactation consultant or a birth worker in the sense that we do now, because it didn't look like it was attainable for us, because it had been stolen and rebranded as if it was something else. You know how they do that whole colonized thing and
let's talk about
pepper. It. I mean, we could talk about it.
We could talk about it.
Because those historical implications really do matter as to why things are the way that they are. So, as a auntie in the game, where were you when they started banning the bags from the hospital? And what is that?
So ban the bags started so we know the formula industry is at this point over $9 billion industry. Mm-hmm. And we also know that human milk is best for our babies. And the formula companies will just go in the hospital and give them all the baby bags. Yep. I'm an 80s baby, so yes. Mm-hmm. We had the bags. Similac. I had the bags, Similac and Famil. Yep. And so our parents had the bag. And so for so many years, the formula companies were giving hospitals free formula, free bags, free material with their logo on it. And folks were formula fed. And so Ban the Bag started, and I don't want to misquote, but I believe it was IBLC, International Board of Lactation Examiners, and or Baby Friendly. I'm not sure which one, but started the movement around Ban the Bags.
Yeah.
And so Ban the Bags were that all the hospitals had to not contract with formula agencies and remove their bags. And so what we're hoping with that was so that folks can now be introduced to breastfeeding. Our providers needed to be educated on breastfeeding. You mean nurses, because in nursing school, oftentimes that's not discussed.
Nope.
In med school, it's not discussed. And so now being able to re-educate or educate our providers on breastfeeding. And so then we lean into Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative. I think we can also talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
Is it really baby friendly?
It ain't mama friendly.
And it's not mama friendly.
Okay.
So, however, right, these are what's in place right now. And if the hospital wants to purchase formula, they have to purchase it at the fair market value. And so Ban the Bags were really introduced, with that.
Yeah.
And we have an initiative that we are, really working on to reclaim the bags. And so it's really important that if you take something away, you have to replenish it. Especially when we're talking about taking something away from the community that they need. And so, we have a little project on the way to reclaim the bags. So that's where we are with banning the bags and, be about to reclaim them.
Absolutely. If you remember what I said earlier, I intentionally left the formula in the hospital because it was all packaged up, ready to go. You get a cute little baby bag, you get some formula, get some other stuff in there, and they send you on your way. And I can only imagine on the nights where it was really tough or I was struggling and he was struggling, what I would have resorted to had I had that formula just readily available, and being able to choose not to take the formula in the bag because I still took the bag, and to go home with the mission that it's me and you, little baby. And so we want to make this feeding journey work for however long it works. So how long did it work for you? So how long did you feed with 1 and 2?
So 1 was really short-lived. My son was short-lived. It was about 6 months.
Okay.
Or maybe a little less than 6 months. And with Nyla, it was 4 years. And so it was a journey, yes, but I enjoyed my second go round. I enjoyed every bit of it. Yeah. Now, not the pumping so much because it was just too much, but I enjoyed coming home and looking forward to her latching on because we know it releases oxytocin. It's just really good, just the good feeling hormones. And so it was like after a day of work, like I would just come home and she would latch on and all the oxytocin was going. So it had its highs and lows. It had lows around when can I have my first drink? Is it going to pass through the milk? Do I have to pump and dump? All of that. But we lasted a while.
That's good.
A lot of folks frown up on nursing your child into toddlerhood, or that part. But it's also these misconceptions. Your baby got teeth now, so they can't nurse, or they walking and talking. But what it does is, and we know, like when they go to preschool and they come home with 3 weeks straight of different viruses, that your breast milk is also protecting them from those viruses.
Right.
And so,
because breast milk is tailor-made.
Absolutely.
For exactly what your baby needs. I was of the mindset, I will breastfeed until my kid has teeth because I don't want him to bite me. I don't want to have that experience. And guess when homeboy got teeth? He was 13 months.
Stop.
Yes.
Wow.
In his 1-year-old pictures, he only has 2 bottom teeth. And I was like, this is unreal. It's unheard of. Like, I should have never said that I'm going to breastfeed him as long as he doesn't have teeth. And for me, I was ready to wean because I wanted my body back. And I felt like he kind of, dictated what I did, how long I did it. And then I woke up one day and he was feeding himself. And I was like, you got to go. You know what? We got to start this process. I want my body back.
Right.
You didn't ask permission. We need to have some better boundaries. But what we do know is those babies going to get the milk that they need.
By any means necessary.
Or not.
Yes.
So that was the beginning to our transitioning journey of weaning. But I remember getting advice about like binding your breast down or putting cabbage in. And I realized, all of that hurt really bad, and I did not want to do it. And those moments that you're talking about, those were the same moments that I had. I cannot wait to get home and feed my kid so he can empty this out. And I was like, if I have to feel that in order to stop, I am not going to stop.
Like, listen, we just going to keep doing this thing.
We are going to do it.
And then over time, they wean themselves or, you know.
They do. Yep. He asked me about breast milk a couple years ago. Ma, you still got any breast milk? No, baby, it's dust in there. Can't even help you out at all. But before we wrap up, can you tell me a little bit about Bayhood, Bay culture, and how all of those things come together for you in the breastfeeding realm?
So BABE, Breastfeeding Awareness and Empowerment, also known as BABE, also is a term of endearment. And what we also focus on is really providing resources and support in around breastfeeding and to bridge this, gap in Black maternal health. And so, again, focusing on reproductive justice, trauma-informed care, and perinatal mental health. Bayhood is our Instagram page. Follow us for all the updates, to register for all the classes, and to just see what's going on in the community. But, and then also you got us at Bay Culture. So Bayhood is, everything that's going on in the hood around breastfeeding. And then Bay is a culture, right? And so we want to just make sure that people, understand what's going on when it comes to breastfeeding, not just for the community, but as for professionals in the field, and if folks are interested in the field. So you can follow us at bayculture.com for more information around that.
Thank you so much for this first episode, spending it with me on a Big Girl Panties podcast, where you're going to pick your prettiest pair, come in, talk about it, where we're going to review hard shit and why we do it and how we look pretty doing it. I'm Saleemah McNeil. I'm your host, and I'll see you next episode.